Hey there, Elliott Forrest here from WQXR. This is another artist check-in, and we are checking in with the esteemed conductor William Boughton. He has a production of Benjamin Britten's War Requiem coming up both in Connecticut and New York City, and it's great to see you again.
And you, Elliot. It's been a long time.
It has been. Full disclosure, we've worked together. I've produced and designed concerts for you in the past. When you were at New Haven, you aren't the music director of the New Haven Symphony anymore. Just catch us up a little bit about what you've been doing.
Yeah, I left the orchestra in 2019, just before COVID, after 12 wonderful years, and was asked by Yale if I would come and teach at Yale and take charge of the Yale Symphony Orchestra, which I've happily done. And they've been 6 fantastic years so far.
It always strikes me that it seems to me that the level of playing from young players is really high these days. That just at a moment when it seems maybe classical music in general, they always say is graying, that the young musicians are really terrific. Have you found that to be the case?
The students at Yale are extraordinary. I mean, a lot of them come to Yale from pre-college, NEC, Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music. So the technical abilities of these students is extraordinarily high. And last year I had 186 that auditioned for the Yale Symphony Orchestra. That's how we're able to do things like the War Requiem.
And you started off in this world as a cello player. Do you teach cello specifically at Yale too?
Not at all. I haven't touched the cello, Elliot, in about 20 years.
Is that right? You don't miss it?
No, I don't miss it, and I don't think the public would miss it if they heard me playing.
Let's talk about this War Requiem. Again, it'll be performed in Connecticut and New York City, April 3rd, 7:30, Woolsey Hall in Connecticut, and Sunday, April 7th at St. Bart's Church on Park Avenue in New York City. The history of this work, what should we know?
It's a pacifist statement. It's the juxtaposition of the Latin Requiem Mass with the poems, 9 poems of the First World War poet Wilfred Owen. And it's an extraordinary juxtaposition which questions the whole of the establishment, the whole of the idea of war, and that it doesn't achieve anything. And I mean, in the poetry, Owen talks about the futility of war, the pity of war, and it brings the soldier's perspective to the whole of the proceedings. It's an incredibly powerful work. Shostakovich said that it was the greatest work written in the 20th century. And it was performed and commissioned in 1962 in Coventry Cathedral, which was bombed by the Nazis in the Second World War. And the work was commissioned for the commemoration of the new building, which stands side by side with the shell of the old cathedral in 1962. And the first performers, it was supposed to have been Galina Vishnevskaya, the soprano, who was Rostropovich's wife, Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, the German baritone, Peter Pears, the British tenor. But sadly, the Russians wouldn't allow Vishnevskaya to perform in this work. So she had to be replaced with 10 days' notice by Heather Harper. But the stories that circulate about that first performance, I mean, for instance, Fischer-Dieskau was speechless at the end of it. He couldn't talk to anybody. He was just in tears. So it's an extremely powerful work with many, many different parts. There are 2 orchestras, a symphony orchestra, a huge symphony orchestra, a chamber orchestra. The symphony orchestra has the soprano and the chorus singing the Latin Requiem Mass. Then there's a chamber orchestra with the two men, the tenor and the baritone, who are soldiers from opposing sides, singing the Owen poetry. Then there's a children's choir up in the gods, unseen, and organ. So there are over 300 performers in this work that lasts around about 85, 86 minutes.
Wow. And the unseen children's choir, that's a statement that we don't see the children. We hear them.
Yeah, the voices of innocence. The whole work comes together at the very end in the Libera Me. It's the only time when all three elements are performing together.
You say that the work deals from the soldier's perspective. I don't know why I always remember this, but I was doing some reading on what we call PTSD now. And previously, there's been different words for it and phrases. One was shell-shocked during World War II, but I came across in the Civil War, they called it soldier's heart, which I thought which is the exact same thing as PTSD and shell-shock, but so poetic to have this lasting effect, this horrible lasting effect of war on soldiers, be called soldier's heart.
Yeah, not for them, dying in the trenches with bullets flying past their heads, dying in the mud and the cold. Not for them were the sounds of a heavenly choir in a church or a requiem mass and the sounds of bells. It's a huge statement, an incredibly powerful statement, and just as relevant today.
Talk a little bit more about that regarding how this historic text that goes back to World War I, as well as the music, relates to today.
Well, it's a comment from the soldier's perspective about how the establishment is complicit in war. It goes along, all of the religions are complicit with governments in war. Soldiers don't set out hating each other. They come across each other. War is now far more removed than it was when they were face to face. But it's that complicitness, that political statement that Britten and Owen are making in this work.
But the idea that, as you say, it's so removed now because in that time period it would be just, and even in World War I and II, just thousands of men running at each other and killing as many people as they can and last man standing. And it just seems like such a ridiculous way, a barbaric way of trying to solve things. And now we have drones, but it's not that much different.
We felt that it was important for the students to perform this work in these times that we're living in, these really unstable times. I think it's important for young people to really question what we're doing.
I'm very excited about this, and excited that you're bringing it to New York City. Just talk a little bit about that. That must be a logistical, I won't even say nightmare, but just quite a lift to take this production from Connecticut and bring it to New York City.
Obviously, bringing 300 people from Connecticut plus instruments is a massive undertaking. But fortunately, it's not that far, so I don't think it'll be too painful. We're all used to traveling. Last year, I took the orchestra to Mexico. We had a fantastic tour.
And what's coming up after the war Requiem with the Yale Symphony?
We finished the season with Beethoven 5 and Respighi, Pines of Rome.
Again, Wednesday, April 3rd, 7:30, Woolsey Hall in Connecticut. And the 7th of April, 7 o'clock, St. Bart's in Park Avenue in New York City. William Boughton, always great to see you.
And you. Thank you, Elliott.